This is Professor Seyed Marandi, a professor at Tehran University. And today is not just the birthday of the 250 Empire of Aggression, ruled by by the Epsteins, but it's also a day of mourning and the beginning of the funerals for the leader, the Iranian leader Khamenei, who was murdered by the Israelis and the Americans back at the beginning of this illegal war of aggression. And I'm pretty sure that the people, the man that the West has labeled as this massive murderous dictator and all that, from the videos I've seen, has massive turnout for his funeral. Meanwhile, the great American State Fair and all that that's the other day in Washington, had a turnout of like 2,000 people or so. So I think there's a moral difference here between the empire and Iran. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And I think that the war itself showed that the extraordinary amount of myth making in the West about Iran, it has just been nonsense. They've been during the past 47 years demonizing Iran, saying that they throw gays off rooftops every morning and hang women in the evening, and I don't know what else they do. They
stomp small puppies. You forgot about
on
that.
The streets on a daily basis, and it's a corrupt regime, as they like to call it, and unpopular, and it's imploding, and it's incapable of governing itself, and so on. And they have these Iranians who they hire, Iranian American. Some of them don't even speak Persian. Some of them have never even been to Iran, but they pretend that they know everything about the country, and so their think tanks are full. Their TV outlets are full of these so-called Iran experts who reconfirm all the nasty and horrible stereotypes about the land that they supposedly come from. And they have hundreds of Persian language media outlets, and then they make reference to them sometimes in their. So it's like a loop, and they hire people to badmouth Iran. Then they quote them, and then it's a circle. And so
I've seen this game before. Let me think. Where was it? Oh, Russia.
True. I mean, for Russia, it had a different trajectory. It of course, existed during the Cold War. Then it sort of went away as they were plundering Russia, because that was the good Russia.
Oh, they were still doing it. Just a lower key, but they were still doing it. That was the interesting thing. As they were plundering, they were still doing it.
Oh, yes. Just like China. I mean, they were still doing it. Yeah, I mean, just like China, they were still doing it, but they toned it down.
Yes.
But for Iran, after the revolution, they went all out in this. And the interesting thing is that they repeat the same stereotypes. I mean, the same narrative. So, for example, in the 1990s, and I once did a program on this on Al Mayadeen. People can go and see it if they like. And like in the 1990s, the newspapers, back then there were newspapers, their headlines would be like, "Younger generation in Iran is sick and tired of the revolution." So it's all about and then in 10 years later, they have the same sort of headlines. And then 10 years later, the same sort of headlines. So it's always like, oh, no, the younger generation wants change. But, we've been saying it like since I was a kid. That's how it works. And so in the war, they themselves believe their own nonsense, and the nonsense that they're think tankers and that they're journalists, who are all handpicked and who are all if they're employed by the Epstein class.
Oh yeah.
And it doesn't matter if they're like the so-called left, like The Guardian or Fox News. They're just different factions of the same elites. So they were expecting Iran to fall last year during the 12-day war, and it didn't. And you would think that they would start thinking, well, why, thinking about why was it that Iran didn't fall, and ultimately it was Netanyahu who was begging for a ceasefire. But the narrative is so powerful that when it hits reality, reality is the side that's ignored. So they stick with there. So when they hit a brick wall, instead of like going to the hospital and then saying, well, we should never bang our heads against a brick wall, they go back and then they say, well, now maybe we should hit the brick wall harder, and this time it'll collapse.
Yep.
So they come back for another war, and again they were predicting that Iran would fall in a couple of days, and they were very open about it.
Yeah.
Of course, they came with much more firepower. The United States was all in, the Israeli regime, these regimes in the Persian Gulf, NATO, everyone was, collaborating. And again, they failed. And not only, and after a week or so, they were saying, well, if Iran survives, it wins. But by day 39, it was clear that they were being outgunned by the Iranians. The Iranians were destroying base after base, all of their assets across the region. The Israeli regime was being hammered day and night. And and the only way that this could have been done is if this country that was being bombarded by this coalition of 60 countries is the only way it could have survived was for it to have popular support.
Right.
You cannot have an evil, monstrous regime. I mean, people are not going to rally around the flag of a monstrosity. That's just nonsense. So this rally around the flag, the notion that the West was saying after a couple of weeks when the war wasn't going their way, was just a way of saying, no, well, even if the regime, if it's unpopular, still people will rally around the flag. Well, when you invaded Iraq, you took Baghdad in a very short period of time.
22 days.
So there's no
still took
rally
22
around
days.
the flag.
It took the American military 22 days. So it's not even that fast, but yeah.
And so, and there was no rally around the flag there. I mean, the Iraqis did not want occupation, but Saddam was not someone that they were willing to die for.
Right.
And so it was only after Saddam Hussein fell that people began to join underground organizations and then gradually begin a resistance. And then in a year or two later, things got really bad for the Americans. So here, the rally around the flag was truly remarkable, but it was because the Islamic Republic had popular legitimacy in the first place, despite decades of maximum pressure sanctions, despite constant acts of terrorism across the country, despite attempts to create color revolutions or military uprisings and all the things that the collective West did against Iran. So the funeral that we're seeing today, and which began early this morning, and people went there at midnight and waited till morning, till the gates were open so they could go in. Huge crowds. And then it's just continuing. Right after our interview, I'll have another, after our program, I'll have another interview, and then I'll be going, but like in the afternoon. And so, already millions have gone there, and I'm still here at home. It's and this is, I think, an opportunity for the West to see Iran's power and the power of the axis of resistance. And then the funeral is going to go to Iraq too. It's going to go to Qom, another city in Iran, and then to Mashhad, near the near the Turkmenistan-Afghanistan border, and he's going to be buried there because that's where he was born. It's a very important religious. It's the most important religious city in Iran. People go there from Tehran, from across the country, like once a year. Some people go multiple times a year. Some people go once every 2 or 3 years. But it's a key place. So he's going to be buried there, but he's also going to Iraq, and the funeral procession will be held there too. And I think that is also going to be a show of force. It's going to show we're going to see huge numbers of Iraqis at the height of summer, because it is very hot now in Tehran, and it must be like 10 degrees hotter in Iraq. But it's going to be a show of force to the Americans, to the Israeli regime, to the Zionists, to the Epstein class, that don't mess around with Iran, don't mess around with the resistance, and ultimately you're going to be kicked out of Lebanon. But these people, they don't learn. It's just like the similar experience that you have in Russia, that they don't learn because it's the empire, and the empire cannot learn. It doesn't reform itself. It doesn't ultimately conclude that an empire is a bad thing, so let's dismantle it. It has to collapse, and I think that we're heading in that direction. They're just overextending themselves,
right?
And this war with Iran, I think, was the turning point. I mean, when even Robert Kagan says this was the greatest defeat of the United States ever, I mean, that's a big deal. And so I think that they're going to be more vicious, as they're going to be more like the Zionists in their behavior. But I think it's not possible for them to survive this. The tide has turned.
When I first mentioned the Great American State Fair right outside of not far from the White House, that was beginning this week. So they got the 250th anniversary of the founding of the U.S. Today. So, and early in the week they had the State Fair, and you had the Fox guys sitting up there. This is great, blah blah blah. But behind them is an empty field. There's like a dozen people walking around, and they showed one of the tents, and it's like it was a music church revival type tent but it's Christian Zionists, right? You got the American flag flying up there, the Israeli flag flying up there, a swimming pool for baptism with an Israeli flag flying up there, and it's empty. There's one guy playing, like 3 people sitting there, and it's empty. It's like you have totally lost the buy-in of your own people. And the statistics came out for the American war of aggression, the illegal war under all international law, because they've tried to claim Article 51. We're coming in to protect. Who are you going to protect? We're going to protect the women. Because they have to be covered up. Well, no, they don't. Oh, okay. Well, we'll kill them then. We'll protect the gays, but we'll kill them then too. Oh, we'll protect the Jews, but we'll bomb the synagogue in the middle of Tehran. So they're trying to figure out how to sell this war, and the statistics that came out was this is the most unpopular war in the last 150 years. It's 1% more unpopular than Vietnam, but unlike Vietnam, that kind of grew to that point, this has been from day one.
That's right.
So it's a total collapse.
It is total collapse. And I think it just shows that they no longer have control over American society, and the Europeans don't have control over their societies either. And even though they are, for them to take over CNN, CNN was horrible anyway. But it's amazing.
Speak the truth.
They take CBS as if CBS was this beacon of freedom, and CBS
it's in the name CBS.
CBS. So CBS was horrible already, but then they assigned some Zionist woman to make it even worse. Well, and the irony is that it's only hurt its reputation further. So mainstream media has been destroyed, and now CNN, which is supposed, or CBS, which are supposed to be like, I don't know, different. I don't know how they were different, but anyway, they're now tainted by being like the worst of the worst, owned by the worst of the worst. So it doesn't work. It's not working because the society is collapsing, infrastructure is collapsing. There are endless wars are draining the resources of the country, and apparently ordinary people don't like funding genocide. They don't like funding a Holocaust, and who would have thought? So, and the Israeli regime is, they can buy the entire media and own it directly.
TikTok.
But people see what's going on, and they see that right now, as you and I are speaking, they're killing kids in Gaza every day, and there's starvation again in Gaza. They've slowly, very quietly reimposed the starvation siege. 400,000 people in Gaza only have one meal a day, and you don't hear about anything. You don't hear about this on the BBC or on Channel 4 News or in Sky News or in the U.S. in any media outlet. Or you don't see it on France 24 or it's all because they're all a part of the same apparatus. It's the Epstein class. I mean, they have different factions, and they have hostile. They have internal conflict, but it is the ruling class.
Yes,
it is the ruling class that has similar global interests and similar interests at home, even though they may not be identical in some ways, but they're all the same more or less for the rest of us.